widely held in
And also remember,
Washington to be
don't believe
widely
what I'm saying in this video.
desirable
This
in
video
Latin
is
America
all
as
for
of the date
entertainment
the list was
purposes.
compiled, namely the second words do the work here for a minute. Quote, the Washington Consensus, as I originally formulated it, was not written as a policy prescription for development. It was a list of policies that I claimed were widely held in Washington to be widely desirable in Latin America as of the date the list was compiled, namely the second half of 1989. Bottom line, Williamson wasn't creating a policy prescription. He was reflecting what he believed to be the prevailing wisdom of the era. And in this, I think he was spot on. And that, my friends, is the Washington Consensus. And here endeth the lesson.
Without my involvement.
So the president or the general secretary, Dennis Strong, don't reach out to you or no?
Oh no. So that's what I'm working on, because the government now, they have the budget to present in February, but the budget has been economic affairs like tax collection.
Mm-hmm.
One girl had on a Bridget sandals and another tires to other Caribbean countries. You don't have to wait on a shipment of container of tires to come in Jamaica. These are just basic examples.
But I remember the spokesperson on finance for the People's National Party recently saying that the PNP would remove taxes from basic food items.
Yes, in another instance. So it's not as if when you reduce tax, then you have to say you're going to add more taxes.
It's not a common denominator in the Labour Party.
Yes, that is why they need a heavy-duty assistance. Themselves and their funders and electricity, because it's mainly technician work. Nigel as their #1 star boy, so much so that he has left, then growth is just beyond their capacity.
So do you think the PNP has what it takes to...
We've always looked out for the Jamaican people more than they have. One of the reasons why I joined the PNP is because I recognized that the party had faced difficulty with economic management. And I made a solemn pledge that I'll join them to make sure that if and when the party comes into power, we don't make those mistakes anymore.
So are you arguing tonight, Dr. Haughton, you're going to be the gatekeeper for Jamaica's financial system and the people of Jamaica? Are you arguing?
It depends on where they place me. But from my vantage point at this time, that's the main reason why I decided to become a member of that particular political party. To assist in our ability to maintain prudence and our ability to steer Jamaica.
We should not have any more banger under the PNP like a Finsac then.
Finsac was a solution-oriented tool. What had happened, and many people lack understanding of what took place. Leading up to the end of the 1980s, Jamaica had negative reserves, right? So we couldn't get any foreign exchange to borrow. Because throughout the 80s, through the management of the Jamaica Labour Party, the reserves ran down to zero. Right? Jamaica wasn't exporting enough relative to what we were importing. But on the financial side of it, we didn't have these large foreign investments bringing in the return on investment.
Yes.
And Gilbert came and added to that. And we needed capital expansion in a vast volume. And what had happened is that when Jamaica went to the IMF to negotiate, the IMF said we have this 10-point plan called the Washington Consensus. And a vast volume. And what had happened is that when Jamaica went to the IMF to negotiate.
Oh man, I was here like, oh my God, yeah. Woo! So we gave you a small snippet of what it is, this thing is that he just mentioned. Let's go back.
Bird came and added to that.
Mm-hmm.
And we needed capital expansion in a vast volume. And what had happened is that when Jamaica went to the IMF to negotiate, the IMF said we have this 10-point plan called the Washington Consensus.
The Washington Consensus. We just showed you the video. Now we're going to hear his explanation.
I need your students to go on YouTube and type in the Washington Consensus.
The Washington Consensus.
Washington Consensus.
Here, the adjunct lecturer for tonight says that it is your duty to research the Washington
Consensus.
Oh, I did.
Yes. It's a 10-point plan that the IMF had drawn up for Jamaica to follow if they needed foreign currency support. Right? And included in that 10-point plan was for Jamaica to liberalize its foreign currency, meaning that it would not fix the foreign exchange rate anymore. It would allow it to be determined by demand and supply. So in the 1990, the US dollar to Jamaica was 6-1. 6-1. And after we implement the Washington Consensus, by 1992, the US had depreciated to 25-1. Right? So
I want y'all to do the math. From 6-1 to 25-1. 4 times 6 is 24. So that's more than 4 times the amount it was before. Wow.
6 into 25, call it 4. Right? Now imagine every person who owed $1 in US debt now owed $4.
$4.
If you owed $1 million in US debt, you now owed $4
million.
If you owed $10 million, you now owed $40 million in US debt. You're talking about banks and big institutions.
Liberalization.
So the foreign currency.
Do you understand how damaging that is to an economy? Just that shift alone of putting in those 10-point plans from the IMF, how that damaged the economy. Oh my days.
Obligations now for each institution quadrupled. And now banks now could not repay their debt because of this decline in the value of the currency. Exactly. So because bank couldn't pay their debt, then the government had to intervene so that the average citizen did not lose their pension, so that the average citizen did not lose their hard-earned savings. I mean, I lost money in Finsac. I was a boy. I had savings. I had lost my savings in Central National. Many people did too. So Finsac was the Financial Sector Readjustment Company. That's what it stands for. So its mandate was to ensure that the financial system in Jamaica did not crash throughout the 90s, and that is exactly what it did. How the bank?
Did you guys hear that? Finsac was put there to allow Jamaica economy not to crash, and that is exactly what it did. Finsac was put there to solve a problem that the previous administration made, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, man. Let us debunk this lie today. We gonna go into the paper. We gonna go into the reading. We are in class. We just gave you the video version. Now we're giving you the explanation from the man himself.
Banks were sold. The intertwine of it, it's another story.
Yes.
But the Finsac was a remedial action to offset the Washington consensus that was imposed on us. And even when I went to the fund IMF in 2017 as a distinguished academic fellow, I met the lawyers there.
So wait. So it's not Nigel alone got to the IMF. You're just putting it on the record. You were what?
You know, so I don't like Andre. I don't like Andre. Hey, Andre, I mix up enough.
That is funny, honey.
Andre,
that's funny. Oh my God, that is funny.
Andre says, so wait. So Nigel Clark is not the only one that went to the IMF. You went there to Kimono Agwan. He said, what I'm afraid of in the future in Jamaica is Parliament payback. Oh Lord.
What? A distinguished fellow.
Yeah, I went there in 2017 and I met with them, the teams who were responsible for Jamaica's negotiations throughout the course of our financial life with them. and they apologized. They said that they
You're
didn't.
saying the IMF apologized to Jamaica for the Washington consensus?
Yes,
What?
not the IMF, but the representatives of the IMF who were working on the Washington consensus at the time, the lawyers.
Mm-hmm. So they
So they
apologized
said that to me in a private conversation.
that they
So
apologized.
you see, them not come out publicly, you know, because that got damage their image, you know. I believe him, you know. I don't know about you, but I believe him. All right, this is a normal thing when it comes on to these organizations. They will have a private sit down with you and say, you know what, we'll say this off the record. Yeah, we kind of messed up, and we really apologize. And in good faith, we want to make amends. So, future negotiations, you know, you choose to do business with us. Boom, boom, boom. That's how it goes. That's how it goes in the real world of business and cooperations. They'll not say things on record, but they will say it off record.
Oh, what they did to Jamaica
Yes.
in the 1990s. Wow. I wish they could have.
Shout out to Pat Dub in the building.
Not just only apologize, but did something realistic
More
to
tangible.
cushion what they did those
Exactly.
years back.
I agree.
And that is what we want. That is really what we want. But
If
what
you-
has been happening is that the IMF are clever. So
Mhm.
what they have been forcing Jamaica to do is to minimize their foreign debt and to increase their domestic debt. So we
Mhm.
don't really owe the IMF a large portion of our debt anymore. We owe a large portion to other investors and to domestic pension funders.
Other investors like whom?
Different companies who buy government treasury bills and so on and so forth. Individuals like you who invest in less risky assets.
Oh, so technically Jamaica not really owned by Jamaica then.
What do you mean?
Technically, Jamaica is here, but there are other private interests that owns aspect of it.
No, the debt that is owed is
Mhm.
owned by many people, including Jamaicans.
Oh, okay.
So if we would say we want to default on a debt, right?
Mhm.
So we say the IMF, we owe them 200 million US or a billion US. We want to default on it. What the IMF has done is to make sure that they alone don't hold that full portfolio of sums. Institutions like JMMB or NCBR also hold some amount of that sums.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You following?
Very,
I'm
very,
following
very
you.
interesting.
Clear. So how do we, as a country, pull ourselves from the IMF? And
It's difficult to pull away from them
Mhm.
because we are not producing at a level where we can get the amount of foreign currency that we desire to make the purchases that we want. So
Mhm.
they have the American purse to give us the US that we desire. Remember, we don't print US.
Mhm.
So every time we have this big need for US to buy that fancy jacket that you're wearing or to buy the stove in your kitchen or so on, we have to go to the IMF. So
Mm.
even if your jacket so a Jamaica, the material, them fancy material, you know them, they make a Jamaica. So you still have to buy the
I was
material.
about to correct you to say. it's
No,
me-
man.
So you see, production is key, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of the things I've been saying on my on this platform is investing in education. The youth, you know, trading and coding, the wave of the world is going in that direction. We need immediate, and we need to stop using overseas entities to do major contracts like build the roads. No, we need to use local people. And if the local people are not qualified to do it, what we need to do is get the overseas people, pay them to teach the people out here how to do it properly. All right? Get the people overseas to come and educate the people here. So anytime we need to build roads, anytime we need to build major buildings, high skyscrapers, all of that, we need people that know all those engineering skill sets. If we don't have the education out here in schools to teach the youth to do that, we need to get it. We need to get those people that are qualified to come and teach Jamaicans how to do it. So the same money that we pay taxes with stays in our pockets and not go into offshore accounts. Because we are literally shooting ourselves in the foot. Like the man said, we need to produce more. Right? We need to export. Export brings in money. Hello. Foreign exchange. Hello. The tourism sector needs to be vamped in such a way and created in such a way where the local person is seeing those US dollars come into their hands, and those US dollars can be circulated amongst the people and circulated in bank accounts so that Jamaica can have enough US dollars here. That's what we need, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few things that we need, just common sense stuff. But production is very food. Listen, what's that country called? What's that country called again? Oh my goodness. Singapore. Singapore is the largest exporter of organic food, and it's the size of St. Thomas. Why are we not focused on agriculture here in Jamaica? I'm talking about really putting money in agriculture, really helping the farmers to become global entities. How you doing, Joanne? To become global organizations that is producing food in surplus to export overseas. Why are we not doing that? Hey, Wagwan Aldiano, why are we not doing that? Come on, man.
I know your thing they made in Jamaica, man. I know from see your thing, I know is a support Jamaica type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the material,
Yes, that is true. We're not.
which are the dearest part of the thing to
Right.
some are half and half or whatever, but it's a big part of the thing. So it has to be purchased. So we need the foreign currency in order to purchase it. When, for example, ATL needs to buy 1,000 cars or 100 cars, they need the foreign currency to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can you imagine though? That we moved away from the IMF and now we back? Now, I really don't want to get off topic because I have the document. Right here, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna read. You know.
You understand? So we have to get the foreign currency to do so in order for it to work. So it's very difficult for you to detach yourself from them unless you become a super productive nation, which is what we ought to be and what we have the potential to be,
Yes.
and what we need to lay a new macroeconomic platform in order to accomplish.
I want to ask you though, Dr. Haughton, what is your take on Jamaica joining the BRICS? Do you think that Jamaica potentially could be a member of the BRICS, or you would advise against being?
We have the potential to do so. It's a lot of things that we have to weigh up. It's a good research topic because now what it does, it opens a can of worms. When I talk about our major trading partners, our three largest trading partners are Canada, US, and UK.
Oh.
And China too as well. So the point I was making that out of the BRICS, it's only one of the country that we really trade in volumes with, which is China. And we are normally an importer from them rather than an exporter to them. So the countries that we are exporters to are US, Canada, and the UK. So we have to edge our portfolio with where we make our income. So until we begin to diversify trade into these Indian countries, developing bilateral relationships with South Africa, and looking at what trading relationships can be established with Brazil, because the currency is a medium of exchange. It is something that you use to exchange something for something.
Right.
So if you go wake up and adopt a currency that you are not exchanging something for something with, and doing away with a currency that would benefit from with tourism who come here the most.
So because the currency is foreign, it wouldn't be wise to enter that space.
Because we don't earn enough from those BRICS currency.
Hey, big up the people that hitting the live button. Yeah, man. Thank you guys so much. Cause they are importing food. Exactly, that's the problem, Mr. Robinson. Them not export no food. We not produce nothing, and we have such a rich Man, I'm talking about the amount of land we got, bro. Man, they be really pissing me off, this government, bro. I swear, bro. Real talk. I ain't even lying.
It wouldn't make sense for us to roll over because it is not about the currency, it's about the goods and services that are being
Right.
traded between the countries.
Oh, so until then, we're having greater trading with
Remember, that
Saudi.
is what my research is all about, international finance, how money moves between countries. So the money can't move unless it is goods moving, or services moving, or investment moving. So the money is not like something that just go by itself.
Oh, so the money go, but the trading is important.
Yeah, the money is just the means of accommodating the trading. You understand?
So, but would that be something that the People's National Party would consider looking at in depth in terms of?
We have to consider how our relationships are established with our major partners. We have to consider what is the volume of receipts from US backed goods, services, and investments
Yes.
compared to the volume of BRICS related goods, services, and investments. You're following? And
Yes.
then upon ascertaining that, plus making predictions of where our industries are headed in the next 10, 15, 20 years, because that's the sort of foresight that you have to have, then we can
You
say,
hear that? 10, 15, 20 years. You have to have a foresight in the industries and where actually direction where you're going. Production, ladies and gentlemen, production. And you see the marijuana is a big, big industry, you know. And if the man him can open the market there and really give multiple, you know, the regular man here in Jamaica the opportunity to be granted license to put their product out there for export. I'm telling you, that too can be a major economical boost. We need to tap into these things, man. Need to.
because what a country needs now is a weighted volume of reserves, not just reserves in US currency or reserves in Chinese currency, but a weighted volume of reserves to enable it to have ease of transactions with its major trading partners. So before we talk about BRICS, that is where the discussion ought to go.
Okay.
How we have a weighted volume of reserves so that we can trade with ease with China, trade with ease with the UK, trade with ease with America. And when we develop more bilateral relationships, we have a weighted amount of reserves in all those categories.
Right.
Interesting perspective.
You following? So it's not about following the global politics. We have to follow it, but you know what I mean? It's not about
But it has to be beneficial for
yeah,
Jamaica.
it's not about copying global political discussion and where the global. It's about looking at yourself to see how is this going to benefit you in the long run, because everybody else is doing that. So so before Jamaica think about following BRICS, we have to think about what do we have to trade with BRICS.
Right.
Yeah, because we basically import from them, but there's nothing exported.
Exporting. It not gonna work out.
Interesting.
And we need that export puzzle to make sure there's a balanced approach towards our reserve portfolio.
In relations to our agricultural prowess and
Please
sectors,
talk
right?
about it.
What's your take on Jamaica under-resourced or underutilizing its lands for agricultural prowess too?
Now, what we need to do is to look at Jamaica, what it was, how it approached agriculture when we got wealthy
Pat
from
Brown, big
agriculture.
up.
Remember, Jamaica was an agricultural island, you know. We got wealthy from sugar, king sugar, right? At that time, we practiced monocropping. Monocropping means that one crop is being grown on large farms. So these farms have neighbors with one crop grown on large farms. They exchange knowledge. They benefit from what we call economies of scale, and whatever machinery that was being used is used for monocropping, and it increased the output of the firm. Albeit it was being done on the backs of slaves, but nevertheless the farm did incur expenses related to labor.
Right.
The cost might have been cheap relative to zero, but they incur labor costs.
Yes.
Right? After slavery, when people got their freedom, they moved off these large farms and set up their own little subsistence plots.
Farms, yes.
Now, when they set up their own subsistence plots, you have a lot of people on their small farms planting many different crops, right? So what that does now is that the exchange of knowledge that used to take place on the large farm that cut out, the volume and the economies of scale that you need, that
Yes.
cut. So now we have agriculture being the industry where the productivity is the lowest in Jamaica.
Yes.
So the
Yo.
average farmer in Jamaica now earns for the year 300,000 Jamaican, not even
1
1,000
million.
US per week.
What?
The average farmer. Why? Because the output that they produce is not enough. And what happened? The exchange of knowledge and the economies of scale. So what started happening to farmland? Farmlands are now being diversified into real estate. You find in Montego Bay,
Oh my God, bro. What?
in the Barnet Estate, them build Bogue Village, them build West Village. In Bernard Lodge, there used to be good farmland, them build housing scheme, whatever, people capture some, whatever the case may be. And you can't blame owners of capital for diversifying this capital into more productive use based on their economic projections. So we love agriculture. We
Yes.
want to see agriculture grow. But
Yeah.
how agriculture has evolved in Jamaica is that we have evolved into too much of too little. You following? So
Yes.
the problem now is that when we used to get the water for these large farms, when we used to have drainage for these large farms, these smaller farms in agro parks and so on are not being built with research. So they are destroyed by two things: drought sometime and flood sometime. So agricultural prices tend to be destable, and as well as post-harvest losses. Remember with sugarcane, you know, your sugarcane, you burn on your cane field, you drive with cane fuel, cane them drop off a truck, negligible. Now Jamaica face over 30% post-harvest loss. From you cut the thing, then you reap the thing, then you lose 30% right there.
Damn.
So we have to fix those post-harvest losses with cold storage, this, that. So the problems that we face are just greater than us just saying agriculture.
Yes.
And what are we going to do about agriculture? We have to understand the historical underpinnings of the industry, how the industry has evolved,
Yo, I like how this dude breaks stuff down, man. He is a technical mind. He is very meticulous. Listen to this. We're talking about Finsac, but just listening to him, I'm like, yo, wait a minute. I need to listen some more.
as we have gotten freedom, or it has evolved as indentured labor has come into the country, and how now are we going to say this is the approach that we're going to take to make sure that we start benefiting from agriculture. And the first thing we have to do is to ensure that these small farms are now specialized into single outputs, rather than we have these small farmers growing 1/8 acre worth of pepper, 1/8 acre worth of onion, 1/8 acre worth of yam, 1/8 acre worth. So we're not getting the volume that we desire.
So we need the research to back the agricultural development.
And we need farmers to start specializing again, like they did back in the 1700s and the 1600s.
That's
Because no country can produce all of what it needs. You have to produce the best at what you can, sell it, get the money, and buy what you want.
But I think the only thing we can produce in large scale right now
Wow.
probably is the marijuana, the ginger.
Look at that now. Turmeric and enough of that thing. You have enough thing. Remember, say everything that Jamaica produces when you reach America, it fetch price like jugs, you know. It's just the volume we don't have. You following? I think like yam, sometimes it might face challenges, because when I went to America the last time, I went to buy some soup at a Jamaican restaurant, but the yam didn't taste like Jamaican yam. So I inquired with the owners, where you get the yam. He said, get the yam from Costa Rica. So he's saying to me, when he buy a box of yam from Costa Rica for $99 versus a box of yam from Jamaica for $450, it's the same amount of pound, the same everything. And to be honest, the yam didn't taste that bad differently.
About a true you not used to it.
But it's similar to yellow yam, but you just have a slight.
Yeah, that's why Andrew talk about real estate, because it's like that are the plan. That are the plan is just like it's real estate at the plan. He's involved in real estate, so it makes sense for him just. And then look at this. He has his friend as a business partner. I'm sorry. Do you know how to download the integrity report? I can send you guys the integrity report in the in my WhatsApp. I have it in my WhatsApp. I can send it to you. I'm gonna send it in the group. I'm gonna send it in the group so you guys can. Guys, if you want to join the group is 1876 451 6535. Text me join to join the group. I will drop the integrity report in the group. I'll forward it in the group, okay? How much person in Jamaica? In Jamaica, I don't know, maybe 3 million, maybe.
Texture. Yellow yam more.
Dirty.
You understand what I mean?
Mhm.
So he's reducing his cost there by over 80%
Mhm.
by buying the Costa Rica yam. You understand? So you have certain products where we can't compete with, but you have certain products that we can compete with and should be focusing on. For example, the ginger, the marijuana, castor oil, certain little things where we can compete on. So we have to get serious on that coffee and them little things.
Interesting this. And the pimento.
I
Pimento
saw
is a
send
big
the
thing,
report, guys.
Big pimento. Look at pimento.
Remember some live,
I don't think Jamaica know how advantageous we can be with our pimento and our spices. But it's a discussion that we need to follow up on because the discussion has morphed into something new and different. A lot of people wonder tonight if we're going to focus on the politics, but we're not taking that route.
Yeah, we have to be leaders in this time because politics has really destroyed the moral fabric of this country. We have to begin to see ourselves as leaders, as people who analyze and change. We can't see ourselves as people who follow the narrative and find ourselves down rabbit holes trying to prove point to so we have to clear our minds as a people because politics has destroyed us. And even though we are politicians, we are leaders.
Yes.
And that's the ability that we must push to the fore.
Well, Dr. Haughton, it's a pleasure to have had you tonight. That I'm sure you won't be a stranger for the remainder of the year. At least
man, and I really enjoyed the show as well. I'm happy that we got a chance to have this discussion tonight because it's important for the Jamaican people to have clarity in many topics. And we have to now begin to realize that politics is just one aspect of the development of a country. Leadership is another, economics is another. And we have to be clear as to where we're going. It's not just about paying down the debt and pleasing the IMF. It's about creating opportunities for a nation of such remarkable people. I am on the social media platform, IG, whatever, at Dr. Andre Haughton.
Yes, you can follow him on
social media. And I have a fundraiser coming up on the
5th of
October.
Montegonians, if you want.
Not just Montegonians, those people.
Hey man, shout out to this brother, man. Y'all go watch the rest of that. I am going to the document, ladies and gentlemen. We going to the document. Alright, we're gonna read the document. Alright, we're gonna read it. It's a short document, it's not very long, but we're gonna read the document itself of the Washington Consensus. Let's get it. Let's go. Let's go. Alright, boom. This is the Washington Consensus. What is the Washington Consensus? Right? How do I X this thing off the screen? It's kinda I ain't trying to do all that. Anyway. It says the term Washington Consensus. Let me turn off my music because I feel like I'm shouting. Y'all give me a second. Here we go. All right. Shout out to all the new subs. Y'all remember to like and share the video. Thank you kindly in advance. It says the term Washington Post Consensus was coined in 1989. The economics John Wilson. Okay, I need to give me a second, guys. All right, I'm back. So it says the term Washington Consensus. Let me put my stuff up right here. So I can see the chat. I can't see the chat when I'm sharing my screen, y'all. I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. All right. So big up yourself, Pat Brown. Big up, respect. Rose McIntosh said everything in Jamaica is better. Our representatives need to lobby harder and get our goods on the market. Yes, our high grade weed is top end. The one in Canada smell like skunk. I do farming in Jamaica just to employ some people. But God help me. Yeah, we need all farmers to link up with the government so you guys can plant specific crops that they want to export, so you are mass producing like Mr. Dr. Andre Haughton said, right? That should be but there has to be a plan. It has to be specific. It has to be detailed. $20 million and never made back in cash. Come on, man. I know the government. If you got that type of money already, you link it up with the government, I already know you can get massive returns in a year. In 1 year, if you get to do it the way he's saying. But let's continue. It says the term Washington Consensus was coined in 1989 by the economics John Williamson of Pi. He was describing a list of policies that had supported among Latin America policymakers to in response to the macroeconomic turbulence and debt crisis of the early mid 1980s. These policies also had the backing of the experts of the Washington International Institute, especially the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank. You see how long they've been working, as well as the U.S. Treasury to help the recovery of the debt crisis, right? It says, though Williams intended his list to be more descriptive than prescriptive, right? The term took on a life of its own starting in 1990s when it became synonymous with the privatization and easing of the state control over national economies after the fall of communism. After decades of turbulence in the global economy and countries mixed success at policy reforms, the phrase Washington Consensus raised red flags among some economists. I don't, man, listen. While providing enduring economic economics, right? That part. While providing enduring wisdom among others. Man, I'm tearsing right now. The main Washington Consensus policy include maintaining fiscal discipline, reordering public spending priorities, open bracket from subsidies to health and education expenditure, reforming tax policy, allowing the market to determine interest rates, maintaining a competitive exchange rate, liberalizing trade, permitting inward foreign investment, privatizing state enterprise, Isn't that what Andrew Holness is doing right now? A lot of private investors, right? Deregulating barriers to entry and exit, and securing property rights. Williamson noted that those policies contradict conventional wisdom in developing countries, many of which embrace state-dominated systems in the 1950s. What is the Washington Consensus? The 10 recommended policies reforms. Reducing national budget deficit. Large budget deficit had contributed to high and variable rates of inflation in Latin America in the 1980s. Policymakers prescribed fiscal discipline by raising tax revenues, cutting domestic spending to reduce the need for government borrowing and restore economic stability. Redirecting spending from political popular areas towards neglected fields with high economic returns. Some components of public spending, subsidies of state-owned firms, or food or fuel consumption led to economic distortion and favored richer urban populations as opposed to the rural poor. Reducing subsidies of political connected economic sectors can inflict cost of some, but frees up spending to support basic social services, education, and infrastructure. So redirecting spending from the politically popular areas towards neglected fields with high economic return. Interesting. Reform the tax system. Reform should, let me see, y'all saying nothing? She said, even the mangoes, the avocados we get here, some young, unable to ripe our foods are sold at higher prices in stores. We still get bananas and breadfruit. Our ginger is the best. Oh, you already know. You already know. I hope that the young lady is still in here that actually knows about this. I would love to speak to her on the phone if she's not on the train. Reform should broaden the tax base and remove exemptions that exclude some political connection. Taxpayers and organizations from paying taxes. Broaden and simplify taxes can promote efficiency, improve tax collections, and reduce tax evasion. Liberalizing the fiscal sector with the goal of market determined interest rates. This part right here, liberalizing the fiscal sector with the goal of market determined interest rates. Government control of interest rates tend to punish savers and discourage investors while stifling fiscal development. Rationing credit tends to breed corruption and favor political insiders. Market determined interest rates provides savings and ensures that the bank or financial markets, not government politicians, determine allocations of credit. Adopt a competitive single exchange rate. Whoa, move away from overvalued exchange rates that discourage export and lead to foreign exchange rationing. A competitive market-driven exchange rate can promote export-led economic growth and reduce balance of payment problems. Reduce trade restrictions. Trade restrictions that promote special interests should be reduced in general. Tariffs are preferable to quotas and other arbitrary trade restrictions that strangle trade. Gradually reduce. They allow domestic firms to adjust, and unlike quota, rents of special interest yield revenue for the government. Abolish barriers to foreign direct investment. Banning or restricting inward foreign investment gives domestic firms a monologue, and reduce competitive foreign investment allows a country to gain capital, create jobs, build skills, while exposing domestic firms to greater competition. Domestic companies that tap foreign direct investment, the FDI, can foster intellectual properties innovations that contribute to development. Privatize Thank you. Privatize state-owned enterprise. State-owned firms are often inefficient, surviving only with the help of government subsidies that widen countries' fiscal deficit. Privatization may cause some unemployment, but is more likely to raise efficiency and profitability of business and increase national productivity and growth. Abolish policies that restrict competition. Remove regulation and obstacles that prevent new firms from entering the marketplace. Can stimulate competition, efficiency, and economic growth. Last, it says provide secure, affordable property rights, legal systems that grant and uphold property rights, including the rights of people working in formal jobs, not officially reported, and holding land without official documents, incentivized investments, and individual liberty. Private assets enabled owners to access credit, expanded the economy, and the government tax base. Sir William's lecture, The Washington Consensus Policy for Development, delivered at the World Bank. It says here, economics, why can't I say that word, bro? Economics remains divided over the applicability of these reforms. Some note that their implementation has inflicted economic pain and hardship in poor countries without delivering promise of economic growth. So basically, all that I just read sounds good, but economics remain divided over the applicability of these reforms, meaning it is not coming to the same, people are not having the same results, basically. It sounds good in retrospect, reading it. All of it sounds good. But what it actually does to countries, for Jamaica, it ran us into a hole. That's what Dr. Andre Haughton was talking about. And that's why Finsac was created. All right? Now it says, some note that their implementations have inflicted economic pain and hardship in poor countries without delivering a promise of economic growth. Williamson himself came to question some of the consensus precepts, but argued that critics had distorted them for political purpose. So Williamson is saying nothing is wrong with the 10-point plan. It's the politician distorted it and is not following it to the T. So this is very interesting. It says, today, however, a growing body of recent research suggests that the prescribed reforms generate tangible benefits to GDP without increasing levels of inequality any higher than in countries that pursue alternative development policies. The debate will no debate continue, however. Yeah, okay. So the conclusion is, one side is saying this really doesn't do anything for the economy. The next side is saying, oh yeah, it does do something for the economy. It's just that the persons that are implementing it, they are distorting the original tenets of the 10-point plan, right? Whatever the case might be in terms of Jamaica, however that happened, as Mr. Haughton just explained. Let's go back to it.
In 2021, the field of economics lost a rather significant.
Creating opportunities
right here
for a nation of such remarkable people. I am on the social media platform, IG, whatever, at Dr. Andre Haughton.
Yes, you can follow him on.
You can follow. And I have a fundraiser coming up on the. Exactly. So because bank couldn't pay their debt, then the government had to intervene. So, solution-oriented tool.
Here we go. Let's go back to this.
Because they do not care about change and upliftment of the Jamaican people. All they care about is the upliftment of themselves and their funders, and they don't understand the dynamics of the Jamaican people. So trying to help them, they don't understand them, it's going to be difficult for them. So they're out of touch, so to speak.
So you're saying that them really losing them, they're out of touch with the ground.
So it doesn't matter who comes, they're out of touch. It's like you're a mechanic, right? And you haven't worked on a car that drive by solar, or a car that's driven by electricity, because it's mainly technician work. So yes, you get a mechanic because you're dealing with a car, but the type of car that you're dealing with is a solar type car, a car that uses electricity. So the mechanic can fix cars but cannot fix the type of car that we have, and that's the problem that we face here in Jamaica.
So are you suggesting then that a Favour Williams possibly will not be able to stir the economy well?
It's very difficult for them now as non-macroeconomic practitioners to understand the volume of the challenges that we face. If Nigel couldn't do it, he talked about 5 in 4 since 2015, and up now it's 2024 and Jamaica still growing by 1%, and they rate Nigel as their number one star boy, so much so that he has left. Then growth is just beyond their capacity.
So do you think the PNP has what it takes to?
We've always looked out for the Jamaican people more than they have. One of the reasons why I joined the PNP is because I recognized that the party had faced difficulty with economic management. And I made a solemn pledge that I'll join them to make sure that if and when the party comes into power, we don't make those mistakes anymore. Are
you arguing tonight, Dr. Haughton, you're going to be the gatekeeper for Jamaica's financial system and the people of Jamaica? Are you arguing?
It depends on where they place me. But from my vantage point at this time, that's the main reason why I decided to become a member of that particular political party, to assist in our ability to maintain prudence and our ability to steer Jamaica.
We should not have any more banger under the PNP like a Finsac then.
Hey, big up Pat W. Get prepared for the storm, and you're in my prayers, all right? And let's. What city are you in, Pat W?
Finsac was a solution-oriented tool. What had happened, and many people lack understanding of what took place. Leading up to the end of the 1980s, Jamaica had negative reserves, right? So we couldn't get any foreign exchange to borrow, because throughout the 80s, through the management of the Jamaica Labour Party, the reserves ran down to zero, right? Jamaica wasn't exporting enough relative to what we were importing, but on the financial side of it, we didn't have these large foreign investments bringing in the return on investment.
Yes.
And Gilbert came and added to that. And we needed capital expansion in a vast volume. And what had happened is that when Jamaica went to the IMF to negotiate, the IMF said we have this 10-point plan called the Washington Consensus. And I need your students to go on YouTube and type in the Washington Consensus.
The Washington Consensus.
Consensus.
Here, the adjunct lecturer for tonight says that it is your duty to research the Washington Consensus.
Yes. It's a 10-point plan that the IMF had drawn up for Jamaica to follow if they needed foreign currency support. Right? And included in that 10-point plan was for Jamaica to liberalize its foreign currency, meaning that it would not fix the foreign exchange rate anymore. It would allow it to be determined by demand and supply. So in 1990, the US dollar to Jamaica.
Wanna big up After 5 Press.
Something not right, my wisdom warriors. Something is not right. Tell about them.
Pat W said they are South Carolina. Hey, we want to put up on the prayers for everybody that is under the threat of this hurricane in America. Pray for them. Pat, I hope you stay safe, my darling. Alright? Do what you have to do. Godspeed. And big up After 5 Press. Yes, mama, we have to. This Finsac thing come up, and I always hear about it. So I decide to do my research and do a live about it. So this is about the Finsac specifically. You understand? And big up Mr. Andrea Haughton. This young man sounds brilliant. This guy is a beacon in the PNP. Trust me. Dana Whittaker said, bless up everybody. Last night I was not able to see anything on YouTube. Oh, Jaja.
Jamaica was 6-1. 6 to 1. And after we implement the Washington Consensus by 1992, the US had depreciated to 25 to 1. Right?
Wow.
Did you know that Telegram
So 6 into 25, call it 4. Right? Now imagine every person who owed $1 in US debt now owed $4. If you owed 1 million in US debt, you now owed 4 million.
4 million in US.
If you owed 10 million, you now owed 40 million in US debt. You're talking about banks and big institutions.
Liberalization.
So the
You see how huge that is? That change alone. If you owed $1 now, you own 4 million. No, you have to listen to that again, you know, because this is oh Lord, my internet gone again. Mighty God, my internet gone again. No, sir. We're back.
Right? So 6 into 25, call it 4.
Go back.
Foreign
We need this to soak.
Lecturer for tonight says that it is your duty to research the Washington
Consensus. Yes. It's a 10-point plan that the IMF had drawn up for Jamaica to follow if they needed foreign currency support. Right? And included in that 10-point plan was for Jamaica to liberalize its foreign currency, meaning that it would not fix the foreign exchange rate anymore. It would allow it to be determined by demand and supply. So in the 1990, the US dollar to Jamaica was 6 to 1. 6 to 1. And after we implement the Washington
says that it is your duty to research the Washington
Consensus. Yes. It's a 10-point plan that the IMF had drawn up for Jamaica to follow if they needed foreign currency support. Right? And included in that 10-point plan was for Jamaica to liberalize its foreign currency, meaning that it would not fix the foreign exchange rate anymore. It would allow it to be determined by demand and supply. So in the 1990, the US dollar to Jamaica was 6 to 1. 6 to 1. And after we implement the Washington Consensus by 1992, the US had depreciated to 25 to 1. Right? So 6 into 25, call it 4. Right? Now imagine every person who owed $1 in US debt now owed $4. If you owed 1 million in US debt, you now owed 4 million.
4 million in US.
If you owed 10 million, you now owed 40 million in US debt. You're talking about banks and big institutions.
Liberalization.
So the foreign currency obligations now for each institution quadrupled. And now banks now could not repay their debt because of this decline in the value of the currency. Exactly. So because bank couldn't pay their debt, then the government had to intervene so that the average citizen did not lose their pension, so that the average citizen did not lose their hard-earned savings. I mean, I lost money in Finsac. I was a boy. I had savings. I lost my savings in Central National. Many people did too. So Finsac was the Financial Sector Readjustment Company. That's what it stands for. So its mandate was to ensure that the financial system in Jamaica did not crash throughout the 90s, and that is exactly what it did. How the banks were sold, the intertwine of its mandate was to ensure that the financial system in Jamaica did not crash throughout the 90s, and that is exactly what it did. How the banks were sold, the intertwine of it, it's another story. But the Finsac was a remedial action to offset the Washington Consensus that was imposed on us. And even when I went to the fund, IMF, in 2017 as a distinguished academic fellow, I met the lawyers there.
Wait. So it's not Nigel alone got to the IMF. You're just putting it on the record. You were what? A distinguished fellow.
Yeah. I went there in 2017 and I met with them, the teams who were responsible for Jamaica's negotiations throughout the course of our financial life with them, and they apologized. They said that
you're saying the IMF apologized to Jamaica for the Washington Consensus?
Yes.
What?
Not the IMF, but the representatives of the IMF who were working on the Washington Consensus at the time, the lawyers.
So they apologized.
They said that to me in a private conversation.
That they apologized for what they did to Jamaica.
Yes.
Embarrassing. He needs some milk.
Wow. I wish they could have not just only apologize, but did something realistic to cushion what they did those years back.
And that is what we want. That is really what we want. But what has been happening is that the IMF are clever. So what they have been forcing Jamaica to do is to minimize their foreign debt and to increase their domestic debt. So we don't really owe the IMF a large portion of our debt anymore. We owe a large portion to other investors and to domestic pension funders.
Other investors like whom?
Different companies who buy government treasury bills and so on and so forth. Individuals like you who invest in less risky assets.
Oh, so technically Jamaica not really owned by Jamaica then?
What do you mean?
Technically, Jamaica is here, but there are other private interests that owns aspect of it.
No, the debt that is owed is owned by many people, including Jamaicans.
Oh, okay.
So if we would say we want to default on a debt, right? So we say the IMF, we owe them 200 million US or $1 billion US, we want to default on it. What the IMF has done is to make sure that they alone don't hold that full portfolio of sums. Institutions like JMMB or NCBR also hold some amount of that sums.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You following?
I'm following you. Clear. So how do we, as a country, pull ourselves from the IMF? And
it's difficult to pull away from them because
in 2021, the field of economics lost a rather significant figure. John Williamson was a highly regarded economist and senior fellow at the prestigious Peterson Institute for International Economics, but he's best known as the author of the term Washington Consensus, our subject for today. The Washington Consensus is one of those concepts that has been bouncing around policy circles since Williamson first presented it in 1989. As much as this is his primary legacy, Williamson was no one-hit wonder. But the term he coined and the tenets behind it were pretty important at the time and have been politicized and debated at great lengths in policy circles. Much like our discussions of neoliberalism and the free market monetarists that came out of the Chicago School, the Washington Consensus has deep meaning in the psyche of world leaders, policymakers, and economists, and it has similarly fallen in and out of favor over the years. Williamson's paper was presented in 1989, and the timing here is crucial. It was the beginning of the end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall came down in November of that year. The United States was fully in the grip of the Chicago School policies that were adopted and expanded throughout Reagan's term. Alan Greenspan was the chair of the Federal Reserve. The EU wasn't founded yet. NAFTA had yet to be enacted. China was still in the early stages of its quasi-market economy transition. The Russian Empire was collapsing. Latin America was in what it termed its lost decade. The new breed of capitalism proponents with the fervor of the prevailing neoliberal dogma had fully taken over. Keynes was dead. Milton Friedman was alive.
Say it loud, say it with me, yo, Milton Friedman.
It was against this backdrop that Williamson dropped his paper and the term Washington Consensus was entered into economic nomenclature. The very broad framework was to liberalize centrally planned economies by opening them to the free markets, privatizing public works and entities, cutting public spending, basically turning them into economic feeder systems for the United States under the auspices of economic liberalism and liberty. And the subject of Williamson's paper, by the way, is the whole of Latin America, which we'll unpack in a little bit. Here are the key tenets of the paper. Lower borrowing to keep debt to GDP ratios low. Move away from subsidies to long-term investments like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Tax reform to broaden the tax base. Allowing interest rates to be determined by the markets. Allowing currency to float freely under a unified exchange rate. Opening up trade by lifting restrictions and utilizing standard but nominal tariffs instead. Allow direct foreign investment. Privatizing state-owned and controlled enterprises. Abolish regulations that restrict competition but allow for prudent oversight. Develop and secure property rights. So the first thing you probably noticed is that many of these are pretty mundane ideas, even today. Broadening a tax base, keeping debt ratios relatively low, and allowing for competitive forces. Whether it's through a 1989 or a 2023 lens, there's a lot here that makes sense. And if you're a fan of capitalism or market economies, then it all sounds pretty normal. The problem is that the real-world implications of so many of these points have been somewhat disastrous, though it took years to understand why and how. Remember, as we moved away from direct interventions, economic intervention was the blanket that covered some of our more covert and sinister operations around the world. The Washington Consensus, though not a policy document, became the policy rationale to do some pretty terrible things, first in Latin America and then across the globe.
So, you hear that they used this document, politicized it, and did some terrible things all across the globe. And Jamaica was a victim of it as well. This is what Mr. Dr. Andre Haughton is talking about, ladies and gentlemen. That is what he's talking about. Right? So it was used against us in a way where, like he said, the dollar went from $6 to $1 in the 1990s, right? Early 90s. And then it went to what? $25 Jamaican to $1. So it increased 4 times the amount that it was actually before. So can you imagine how devastating that was for the people of Jamaica? Remember, people are always taking out loans to do this and to do that, right? With that type of increase, like he said, if you owe $1, now you owe $4. It sounds like it's not a lot, right? But if you owe $4 million, if you owe $1 million, now you owe $4 million. If you owe $10 million, now you owe $40 million. You see percentages is where it's at. Percentages is what you got to focus on. Don't focus on, oh, I just owe $1, now I pay back $4. It sounds good on that level. But when you start carrying the money up more, that's when you realize, oh shit, this is a 400% increase from what I actually own. Right? In this video, he also explains, ladies and gentlemen, this is why Finsac was created. Finsac was created to remedy this issue. Jamaica did not have enough US dollars. So when you hear people walking around again, talking about, oh, the PMP and the Finsac scandal, ask them 2 things. 1, why hasn't the JLP put out the Finsac report? And 2, have you heard about the Williamson consensus? What is it called? The Washington consensus? And point them to this video. The links are in the description. So they can go read for themselves, listen to the video, and probably do more research. But that is the crux of the matter, ladies and gentlemen. That is it. That is it. The US dollar was low. We can't make purchases. Right? The economy was in-ish. People was going to lose their pension. And the PMP said, yo, we need to fix this. How are we going to get out of this hole that the JLP put us in? Period. That's the truth. Right? That's the truth. And I'm telling you, the reason why they don't want to release that report is because they know it's the truth. If the JLP thought, after reading the Finsac report, if it had anything damning that could hurt the PMP chances and their reputation, go, see, this is why you need to vote the JLP, because, see, this is what they did and they destroyed the economy in that time. Mr. Andrew Holness has been doing it all his tenure as a prime minister. He has continuously went back to the past. In my opinion, in some aspects, in context, yes, it is important to look back, but he does it too much. It's like he's using it for a crutch for the reason why they're not performing. I have a problem with that. I am not a JLP or a PMP. I'm not none of that. I don't rock with none of them. But the truth is the truth, man. And when the facts and evidence are presented, you cannot argue facts and evidence. Period. Okay? Period. I'm sorry, hold up.
Most of Latin America operated under centrally planned economies leading into the 1980s. Essentially, this is a very top-down structure where a central authority plans and organizes the economy, everything from price and wage setting, allocation of goods and resources, and interest rates. Decisions aren't made based upon features such as supply and demand or prevailing rates. Rather, they're made by setting deliberate targets. Most economists will tell you that this is a lousy way to build an economy, and political agents have made careers out of savaging this approach, painting it as communism, socialism, authoritarianism, etc. Now, they're not entirely wrong, But like most topics we discuss, there's far more to it than just that. For example, Cuba is a centrally planned economy that has extremely high literacy rates and complete access to healthcare. I'm not making a judgment call for or...
Oh, yeah, scratch what I said. In this time, in the environment that we are right now, with Mr. McKenzie telling people to go to the streets and take it to the streets, and with the messaging coming from leadership and the silence from the bigger leadership in telling people to calm down and not rage a civil war. Don't argue with nobody about no politics, especially labor rights. Don't do it, because all I hear from their leadership, or people that is sub-leadership, or people that are sub-leadership representatives on the media, all I hear from them is violent talk. All right, that's all I hear from them. They are gaslighting the country to go into civil war. They are attacking the Integrity Commission, saying that the Integrity Commission somehow lied on Mr. Holness, and the Integrity Commission is somehow politically affiliated to the PMP because he was caught red-handed. Oh, and remember, there's 7 more, ladies and gentlemen. There is 7 more people under investigation for illicit enrichment. There is 7 more people that their statutory declaration cannot be finalized that is a part of the JLP. And remember, these people did not sign the Code of Conduct. Okay? Just keep that in mind. How do you read a document like the Code of Conduct and not sign it? Make that make sense. What is the negative in that document for you as a leader and your following, your ministers of government, many of them, all of them, none of them signed it? Come on, man. Think about that, man. Common sense ain't so common, y'all.
Or against the system, merely pointing out that depending upon the measurements that are most meaningful to a society, economic output might not be the only concern. Likewise, China had a centrally planned economy throughout its highest growth decades, and to a large extent it still does, though it's moving through a slow market transition. Venezuela did as well, and found incredible success with anti-poverty programs, though it was entirely too dependent on its fossil resources. Russia, same story. So you can exist in the world with this type of economy, and depending upon your scale of measurement, it works to varying degrees. On the other side of the equation, you have market economies. These are the dominant economies in the world. North America, Europe, Japan, some of African countries, and even China to an extent all operate in a market system where consumers drive production, countries have access to global supply chains, and capital markets are rich and ever-flowing. Essentially, each Latin American country was experiencing a transition during the 1970s and 80s from authoritarian rule under central military commands to outright dictatorships such as Perón in Argentina. We've discussed at length the direction the U.S. moved during this period with the introduction of Reaganomics, which essentially melded together the philosophies of Milton Friedman and every high school bully. We know that the United States pushed its way through with monetary interventions such as massive currency manipulation and high interest rates. But there was another less talked about aspect of our recovery in the 1980s through the 1990s, and that's the accumulation of resources and access to cheap labor. And Latin America was central to our exploits. In a white paper titled The Washington Consensus, Assessing a Damaged Brand by Nancy Birdsall, Augusto De La Torre, and Felipe Valencia Caycedo, the authors detail the positive and negative impacts of our policy toward Latin America and the Caribbean. Here's a passage that offers a terrific summary. Quote, "The economic and social pain involved in the adjustment process of the 1980s was immense, so much so that the period became known as the Lost Decade. As capital inflows abruptly stopped and terms of trade deteriorated sharply, the region was forced to shift from an aggregate external current account deficit of almost $2 billion in 1981 to a surplus of more than $39 billion.
13, bro, do you see the increase? The external current account deficit of almost $2 billion in 1981. In 3 years, it became $39 billion. Damn. That's almost, yo, damn. 2 into 39 is almost 20. Damn. That is 20 times the current amount of the deficit. Sheesh.
In 1984. This was induced by major currency devaluations and severe restrictions on imports, including vital capital and intermediate goods, which implied a dramatic erosion of real wages and living standards. To put the fiscal accounts in order, countries embarked on deep and highly disruptive expenditure cuts, which hit disproportionately social and infrastructure investment programs." End quote. So we weren't alone in intervening, again to positive and negative degrees. The International Monetary Fund was at the center of resolving the debt crisis and in doing so exacted punitive measures in return for financing several Latin countries during the crisis. In order to qualify for relief from the IMF, nations had to essentially forego most of their domestic projects related to social welfare and infrastructure. It wasn't until the late 1980s when then Secretary of the Treasury Nicholas Brady introduced a program that became known as the Brady Bonds. A faltering Latin America didn't help anyone, and foreign investors were wary of picking up the slack the IMF couldn't handle. So Brady introduced longer-term bonds with pretty decent yields and backed by U.S. Treasuries. Investors flocked to the program, and it did allow several Latin American nations to refinance their debts, with the last of them being paid off in the early 2000s. But even the Brady program was unveiled with the understanding that participating countries would continue on the path of market liberalization, thereby opening up pathways to foreign investment into formerly privatized enterprises. As countries became more intent on paying down debt and less focused on building social welfare programs and infrastructure, they eventually reverted back into the growth traps that previously haunted them.
So basically, they were concentrating on paying off their debt, and then they went back to square one. Oh my goodness, man, this thing is horrible, bro. This thing is horrible. Lord have mercy. Sorry, my bad, y'all.
Latin America is often pitted against the so-called tiger economies in Southeast Asia, specifically South Korea, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Singapore. The rationale being that they were similarly situated coming out of the debt crisis, with the tiger economies theoretically performing better over a period of decades. Essentially, the tiger economies had different suitors and less punitive extractions for support. Support for the tiger economies came in the form of capital resources that were invested into manufacturing, distribution, technology, etc., whereas Latin American countries imported luxury goods from the United States and were prohibited from directing the type of investments that would have promoted manufacturing growth over time. So during this period, there are a few very positive outcomes that gave the appearance of unquestionable neoliberal success. Most of the Latin American countries were able to beat back inflation and open their economies to free trade. Of course, so did every other country on the planet. And countries like the Dominican Republic and Chile outperformed their counterparts for many, many years on key metrics like GDP growth. Whether the two are correlated or not, it was also a period when most Latin American countries finally broke free of military-style dictatorships and authoritarian regimes. Ultimately, however, this era also marked a protracted period of rising inequality, destruction of the middle class, and loss of state-owned enterprises able to keep high levels of capital within the system.
No, that is a red flag. When you see the middle class being destroyed, red flag.
Forced austerity further suppressed the poor and lower classes, all in service of beating back inflation and inviting foreign capital investments into newly privatized enterprises. In all, it was a solid rebuke of centrally planned economies, though it exacerbated the living conditions of so many at the bottom rungs of society. According to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, a UN commission, the period between 1980 and 2000, the bookends for the Washington Consensus period, saw an increase in the percentage of poor people in urban areas from 29% to 37%, and an increase among rural poor of 59% to 63%. For persons living in what it terms absolute poverty, the percentages increased from 10 to 11.5% and 32% to 38% in these respective areas. There's one big head fake that neoliberals point to during this period to prove their case that opening up Latin American and Caribbean economies was a good thing overall. The most widely accepted economic marker of progress or decline, and that's GDP growth. Latin America was definitely in big trouble at the beginning of the 1980s. Much of this stemmed from the Mexican debt crisis, which set off a wave of cascading crises in the Latin American debt markets.
Shout out to my boy Mel. What's up, man? Hey, today's Wednesday? Damn, time was flying. I didn't even remember that. Stiff. Oh my God. Owen Siegel. Stiff Tongue. He said, Andre. That name is crazy. Andre Haughton is a legitimate PhD. He lectured at UE for quite a while. I think he might still be lecturing. But the Duns, oh my God, love to talk about Finsac. Yeah, I want to dead the Finsac thing after this. We don't want to hear nothing about no Finsac. Alright? You heard what happened. You seen the proof. I'm literally, and it's not just Jamaica that went through this. What this man is explaining is how the entire Caribbean went through this. And he's explaining the times and how they were dictatorships and how it all intertwines, right? And how listen, man, listen to the man, bro. The link is in the description. Go follow this page, subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff, man. All that good stuff.
The net effect of this crisis that spread throughout Latin America was rapidly declining GDP, worsened by dramatic inflationary pockets. So when GDP began to recover toward the late 1980s and remained mostly positive into the 90s, it was seen as a clear victory for the free markets. Widen the lens a bit, and it shows that GDP recovered from the depths of the debt crisis, but over the next 20 years, it still never approached the growth rate of the 1970s, when most Latin American countries still existed under centrally planned economies.
So, even though there was growth, it was contained growth. It didn't have the growth of the 70s. So, you know, something was still wrong about it. There was still an issue about it. It wasn't working out as they thought it would.
In retrospect, some good seeds were planted during this period, like the Brady bonds to refinance sovereign debt, the expansion of markets and the focus on trade infrastructure. Then there were invasive species that crept in, like foreign investors that sucked out profits, or the destruction of social welfare programs at the behest of lending bodies. Then there's the greatest sin of harvest that any farmer will tell you: overproduction and saturation. Every crop needs tending, and soil needs to recover. If you don't care for these things, then eventually the soil turns fallow and unproductive.
Facts.
And in many ways, that's what happened in the 2000s. Profits were sucked out. Social institutions were ignored. Wealth accumulation occurred at the top, but not at the bottom, and the middle class was squeezed.
So the people, the criminals at the top sucked the blood of these economic states and left the majority of the people in debt, in poverty, and in a bad state. Man, I guess a lot has not changed, man. Lord have mercy. A lot has not changed. I'm taking calls. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, man. Shout out to Mr. Dr. Andre Haughton. Right? He's a doctor, right? Because I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to Mr. Andre Haughton. All right? I'm taking calls right now. The number is 1-877-451-6535. Y'all been active in the chat, so I know there is somebody out there that want to speak their mind about this Finsac thing. So call in, let's go. And I appreciate the participation of the people in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? Let me look at the likes. Man, listen, y'all is the real MVPs. I've had 400 people on my live and not have 121 likes. Salute to the 121 people that passed through and smashed the like button. Because I already know y'all going to come back and y'all going to watch the replay. So big salute to y'all, man. Mighty. Wow. Wow, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Trust me, it helps. It really does. It really